is new here, except for people coming from out of the country that are going to be speaking. Great, we have some new folks. Where'd you guys hear about the event? If you don't mind me asking. Luma, cool. Yeah, we do post on Luma now. We moved off meetup.com, which has been kind of a SHIT show over the past several years. So glad to hear you discover us on Luma. And so yeah, for those that haven't been here, this is the Bitcoin and Open Blockchain meetup. A lot of people might think it's the Edge meetup, but actually this meetup has existed well before this company. It's been around since 2013, before I discovered Bitcoin. It was the way that I met a lot of the people in the space and learned a lot about Bitcoin. And I helped start contributing to it, organizing events, which I guess leads to who the hell am I? My name is Paul Pui. I'm CEO and co-founder of Edge, the offices that you're in here. Also one of the co-organizers of the Bitcoin and Open Blockchain meetup, along with Daniel, who also helped co-organize it. We have, like, believe it or not, a handful, but they all couldn't make it. One guy, family emergency. Another guy hurt his back. Another person, I can't remember he was busy with work, got called in as a security dude. So unfortunately, a lot of the organizing team isn't available today. But thankfully, at least the two of us are here to be able to host this great event for you guys tonight. For those that are new to Edge, this is our HQ. We are a self-custody, I call it like a trading wallet. Lets you buy, sell, and trade cryptocurrencies across dozens of blockchains with a very high level of privacy. Privacy is what we really focus on. We support probably more privacy assets and chains than I think any other self-custody app. We're big fans of Monero. Been supporting it since 2018. Xano, which is a newer chain, which is actually built by some of the same developers that wrote the original code for Monero, but it provides privacy assets. We're also one of the first to integrate fully shielded Zcash, for those of you who might be familiar with that chain. And Pirate Chain, which is a fork of Zcash. So privacy is big for us. We want to deliver that to the general masses. So for those that haven't tried Edge, give it a try. Edge.app, super easy URL to get to. You can download it directly into your de-Googled phone if you have that, or from the Play Store or iOS App Store. And hit either me or Daniel up during the night, and we'll send you $5 of free crypto just to try out the app, bounce it around, give it a shot. And I like to say the app is so private, we don't really know what people run into and what they like or dislike. So please send us some feedback. Let us know what you run into so that we can improve the app, or hopefully know that it's awesome already, which I'm sure there's always room for improvement. And so, yeah, thanks a lot. Edge.app, it's where to go. Got a question? You said Zap Store? Okay, I think that's one of the alternative app stores for Android. So Edge React GUI is the name of our repository on GitHub. So that app store is likely referencing our old repository as the name. That, I believe, is the app, although I can't vouch for other app stores putting the correct app in there because we haven't put it in there ourselves. So the best way to get the actual APK would be go to edge.app itself, and you can download it directly from there, and you know that it's the APK that we put, and it's signed by us, by our SSL certificate on our website. That would be the safest place, but it does exist in a few other app stores as well. And it is open source. Anybody here a developer? Developers? So everyone wants to tinker with open source code, or have your agent tinker with open source code, you can go to github.com/edgeapp, and you can actually build it yourself, tweak it, submit pull request, update what you think is broken or what you'd like to improve, and it might actually get merged. Cool. With that, I wanted to introduce to you guys today Aaluxx. I'm a founder, head developer, maintainer of Maya Protocol. It's a good way to introduce you to. But Maya Protocol is a fork of one of the most popular, if not the first, really widely adopted decentralized cross-chain decentralized exchanges, Thorchain. And in addition to forking and creating this friendly fork of Thorchain, he's actually contributed back to Thorchain some of the most important changes necessary to keep the protocol alive. And so known Aaluxx now for probably a year or not two in the space, and I can't speak more highly of the conversations and the stuff I learn about multiple different protocols. What I like about talking to people that work on decentralized exchanges, especially Aaluxx, is that there is a chain that they build, and there's a lot that goes on inside a chain that implements cross-chain functionality. But what you also learn is about each one of those individual chains and all the hurdles that it takes to integrate those individual chains and the nuances of what goes on between them. So there's a wealth of knowledge in talking to people that develop a lot of these cross-chain protocols. I learn a lot every time we sit down and have a conversation. And so I'm excited to have him here, present to you guys today about the stories and whatever you'd like to talk to us about in respect to that land of cryptocurrency, which is, I think, a very unique and very difficult part. I think the builders in this space, in that specific niche of crypto, are building some of the most difficult pieces of it. And most importantly, I believe they're building some of the absolute most important parts, because they're the ones that are building the tools that eliminate the need for some of the most centralized services in our space. And if there's anything that I'm a maxi of, it's not Bitcoin, it's not any specific asset. I'm what I'd call kind of a self-custody maxi. And I think that's what we need to drive adoption for. And they're building exactly what we need to be using to achieve self-custody. So with that, Aaluxx, come on up, and thanks a lot for coming over and giving us this time.
All right, guys. Hello. Happy to be here. First of all, thank you for that introduction. Thank you also to my father and my wife that joined me today and support me. I owe a lot to them. Like Paul was saying, I'm Aaluxx, co-founder of Maya Protocol, project lead as well. And what Maya does is what he describes. We facilitate cross-chain crypto exchange. So you're moving from one chain, let's say Bitcoin, to another one, let's say Ethereum, and you want to move from one to the other without trusting one centralized party. Well, Maya is what you use. Actually, if some of you are already users of Edge and you download the app like Paul suggested, and you try to do one of those swaps, you might just accidentally use Maya and not even realize it, which is kind of fun. But thank you to Edge as well, not only for hosting this event, but for supporting Maya early on and what we're doing and building. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the history of crypto exchange. I was talking with Paul earlier over coffee, and he was telling me that he always finds interesting when we see this continuity of where we're coming from, where we are now, and maybe what's coming next. And I'd like to talk about this history around specifically two of the main things that you want out of a crypto exchange or any exchange at all, even if it's not crypto. There's two things you want. Number one is availability. When you want to do a certain transaction, you want to be sure that you can do the transaction at that time. You don't want to go to the grocery store to buy bread and they don't have bread at that time. Please come later. That's annoying. That would be the same if you want to trade Bitcoin to ETH. So availability is very important. Another one, though, is crypto efficiency. Now, that might not matter to you much as a user, apparently, but it actually does, because capital efficiency will lead into what price you're trading it for. So going back to that example in the grocery store, if you're buying bread, well, if the efficiency of getting that bread to the store to you is low, that bread will be expensive. We don't want expensive bread. We want cheap bread. So what happens behind that grocery store in the logistics of it to make the bread get there, if that's efficient, well, the bread will be cheap. So that's what we want in any exchange. Capital efficiency, that it's cheap to get the thing you need, and it's available. It's there when you need it. So now there's a kind of way that we can cheat this process a little bit, which is have a person in the middle that administers the bread available, the crypto for you. And now that person can match up people with money, Bitcoin, people with bread, ETH, let's say. Well, that's great and all, but that's the first thing that didn't make sense to me when I started my crypto journey. Back then, I remember I was reading the white papers and kind of getting involved and trying some transactions. But it was funny to me that when you read the Bitcoin white paper, it says trustless peer-to-peer cash. But then when I want to move between one and another, I suddenly use an exchange again. That sounds an awful lot like a bank. So I didn't like that. It kind of irked wrong. And when people told me, what do you think about crypto? I was like, it's cool, but it's a gimmick because you're still trusting people in many steps. And that's what Paul was referring to when he said there's a lot of centralization still in some of the day-to-day stuff we do in crypto. So having a centralized party is obviously an easy way to solve this problem. You know, you have a centralized party that has the two things you need. So when you have Bitcoin and you want ETH, they just, you know, change it in your database and they have some liquidity available and ready. But can we do better? Can we kind of try and move to a trustless fashion? So that's where we start the history in atomic swaps. Who here has heard about atomic swaps? So an atomic swap would be akin to just going and saying, you know, I have 100 Bitcoin, I want ETH, and see who can fulfill that for me. So it's like going to the store and saying, I want bread, and they say, okay, let me see if I have some available or let me bake some. So that's great. It's very capital efficient because you're just gonna do the right amount of bread you need at that time, but it's not very available. There might not be a person right now willing to do the off trade. Now the problem is exactly that. You always need somebody to do the counter trade with you. So now imagine there's a crypto crash. Right now, price of things are falling, and now you want to exactly sell what's crashing. How do you do that? If you're going to something that's atomic, that's, you know, first come, first served, whatever you need, let's find somebody that wants to do the opposite with you. Availability becomes very important because now you really want to get out and you really, really can't. So what can we do better? Well, another thing we can do is order books. Have people all around the world come together and start setting orders of saying, you know, I want to sell Bitcoin, I want to sell ETH, people say at what price, and at some point they match and you transact. There's two problems with order books. Number one is it's a little bit capital inefficient because you're leaving money waiting to be served. It's also a little bit unavailable because you're waiting for the price to hit for your order to be fulfilled. But there's an additional problem, which is a custody problem. Where does this Bitcoin sit while it's waiting to be fulfilled? Somebody has to custody that. So who's doing that? So that's a key question. Who custodies the monies at rest before the transaction is going to take place? So order books is good, but those three questions need to be answered. And over time, some designs have come up to try and solve this problem, and order books have come up that solve it with different trade-offs. You know, some choose to have an off-chain order book that will do the matches. That makes it a little bit more efficient, but starts to be centralized in when did an order actually get matched. Some try and do everything transparent, but keep custody of the funds, so that's not very trustless. And well, that has developed over time. But a key innovation came in 2017 when Banker wrote about AMMs. Who here has heard the term AMM? So AMM, automatic market maker, that's what it stands for, is a key innovation in how to make a market, which is there will be a pool that people add liquidity to, and this pool will always be willing to trade with you at any point. So availability is very high. And the way it's going to do that is by always assuming both sides of the pool are worth the same. So if it has 100 Bitcoin here and 10,000 ETH here, well, it will assume both sides are worth the same. So one Bitcoin is worth 100 ETH. Well, that's a problem though, because it might not be the case that that ratio is happening. Well, there's a key important and beautiful thing here, which is if the ratio is not the right one, there's a profit opportunity by somebody to come in and put the ratio in the right place, because either one side is cheap, let's say the Bitcoin is cheap, or the ETH is cheap, so somebody comes in, does the trade, sells it in the right market where the price is real, and now make profit. So because of that single profit fact, any AMM will always reflect the current market price plus a spread of, how profitable is it to balance it at that time. So AMMs are great at having the right price, They're also extremely available, but now we come to availability. To capital efficiency. How capital efficient do you think that is? Very low. You have this pool with a lot of 100 Bitcoin, 10,000 ETH standing there waiting for somebody to come. It's very inefficient. It's just waiting. Somebody came, did a trade, great, made some money, but it's very available. It's so available it starts to be capital inefficient. So regardless, it's such a good model that that's exactly what Uniswap does. Well, at least what V1 and V2 of Uniswap did. It's pools using this AMM model, allowing people to trade assets. Now they trade, let's say, ETH on Ethereum to USDC on Ethereum. But what happens if you want to move chains? Well, that's exactly what Thorchain solved in 2020. So what Thorchain did was make this AMM model cross-chain, allow for swapping between chains with the AMM model, bringing high availability with not great capital efficiency to crypto. And that's what Thorchain did. That's what actually Maya does today. It uses an AMM model to facilitate transactions. But we can do better, and we're going to talk about that in a second. So that's where Thorchain was in 2020, 2021. But a lot of change has come here because that capital efficiency fact, the low capital efficiency, is a problem. Because if it's not very capital efficient, it means it's not very attractive to add liquidity. That means there's not a lot of liquidity. Maybe transactions cannot be settled to the right price. Remember, the bread is too expensive. It's the case here. You have to start having spreads that are too large. And now Binance is way cheaper. So despite that Maya and Thorchain, they're great. They're permissionless, they're free, decentralized. But it's more expensive. And people take that into consideration quite a bit. So we can and will do better. But I'm going to talk a little bit first about another model that's become popular, which is the intentions-based model. This is something that competitors like Near are doing, and they're great at, which is, remember that atomic swap where I would say, I have 1 Bitcoin, I want 100 ETH? They kind of do that too, but in a way where this request is kind of shared across many different bots that have access to Binance, a Kraken, and a Coinbase, or whatnot. They come and quickly serve that transaction much more quickly than what would think. Now, they've gone the other way. They have extreme capital efficiency. There's no funds deployed at all until somebody declares their intention, and at that point it's served. But that also means they have a bit lower availability. Notice how, again, in a crash downturn, there might not be somebody that's willing to take the counter trade. But also they have a little bit of a centralization risk because they have to then go out and search for funds in these central exchanges that we want to replace. You see? So although it's good, it's a little bit more trustless, it's a little bit more transparent, the whole crypto market shouldn't be overly reliant on intent-based architecture. So what do we do now? Well, the key thing we want to do is how do we find creative ways to make this availability be very high, have the ability to move between different chains at any time you like. It's always willing to be the counter trade. But how do we make it more capital efficient? How do we try and have a bit more functionality and behaviors more akin to the other methods that I've described that are more capital efficient? So what are Thorchain and Maya doing? Well, there's a couple of things. One is we have something called streaming swaps. Who here has used Netflix? That's an easy one, right? Well, why we call that streaming is because when you go and click on a movie, it's not actually downloading the movie and then having you watch the movie later. That would be different. That would be downloading. It's streaming because every second there's a little bit of a stream of information going through the internet to your screen for you to watch. But it's going so fast in streaming that you don't notice it's happening. So it's not downloading the full movie, but just bits and pieces as you watch it. Well, streaming swaps got that name because it's something similar. Instead of coming and bringing, let's say, $1 million of Bitcoin and I want ETH right now and trying to serve that, well, that's such a big move. It would move the market, whatever you're doing, even it's an AMM, it's an order book, whatever your design is, it's so much money that it's gonna start bringing the price execution down. So what we do instead is we cut it. We cut it into many smaller transactions and we stream them over several blocks. And now every single subswap, instead of being $1 million, now every one is of $100. That's quite easy to serve. And then we accumulate the output and send the $1 million at the end. So that's streaming swaps. And that helped us be a little bit more efficient because now we can get a little bit better price execution in every single step and then send the total output with just one transaction paying gas once. Well, that's one thing, but that's limited by each block that we have. We have one block every 6 seconds on Maya and Thorchain. So another thing we're doing is increase the block time. We're trying to get that to 2 seconds. That will help us be able to crank this a little bit faster. Something we added recently was limit swaps as well. So remember those order books? People declare what price they're willing to trade something. We're placing that on top of the AMM pool. So now when the AMM pool moves, it fulfills these orders. So now it kind of starts behaving a little bit more efficiently as well on that front. But then we came up with rapid swaps. What is rapid swaps? Well, remember those streaming swaps that I just mentioned? Now imagine you're doing that streaming swap, but it encounters the price moves to a point where there's a limit swap on the other end. Well, we're gonna match it up and have that be served more quickly. So we're coming up with many creative ways on how to retain this availability while we are more capital efficient. There's some more things that I spoiled to Paul that we can't talk about yet so publicly as we're still designing them. But this is key because availability is part of decentralization, permissionlessness. Because if we want to give people choice, freedom of movement, just as the freedom to move from a country to country makes governments fairer because they have now to behave better to not lose their citizenry. It's the same thing in crypto. If people can move around, well, crypto has to be better. Has to be better designed, better managed, better executed, better developed. And that's what we have to do, to really develop the whole space in a way that makes the transaction of money and the use of information more fair, more open, more accessible. We have to have choice embedded in it in a way that doesn't incur trust and it doesn't bring restriction. So permissionless decentralized exchange is a central part of crypto, and it's a central part of what Edge, Maya, and a lot of us builders are trying to do. So I hope next time you're looking to move from one chain to the other, before you go to Coinbase, before you go to Binance, you look at who's trying to do this without trust and use that instead. And that's all. Happy to take some questions maybe. I hope you like the talk. Should you shout it or do you want the microphone? There's Elizabeth.
Okay, I had a question. Great talk. Thank you so much, by
Thank
the
you.
way. Well, my question touches on an understanding that AMM solved the custodial problem by being a simple enough protocol that you could then distribute that protocol to many nodes and therefore make it more decentralized, more permissionless.
Mm-hmm.
As you're adding these other layers, other things on top of the AMM model, what sort of considerations do you have to make sure that you don't end up creating a tendency towards centralization with these new protocols due to their complexity or other nature?
So the AMM model doesn't solve for the custody problem. The AMM solves for the what's the price model. The what's the price is what is this worth right now and how much should I get for this? So if you're let's say you're filling the tank at the gas station, what is the price of the gas? Well, somebody will say it's $10 per gallon. Well, who's deciding that? So the AMM, what it does is make the what's the price question decentralized by having by making the fact that the price is the wrong one, have some profit in it for whoever comes and has the right one with a first come first serve basis. So making an ARB opportunity for whoever is right and makes the price be right. So AMM doesn't solve the custody problem. What solves the custody problem is a lot of things that happen in the back end of Thorchain, Maya, and other decentralized exchanges. Now there's two ways you can solve the custody problem. Number one is you're a smart contract. So you're Ethereum, you have smart contracts, you can deploy a smart contract called Uniswap, and that Uniswap contract will always settle the correct way according to its code, guaranteed by the whole set of thousands of Ethereum validators. And the only way to cheat is if you can take over the network. Now it's so large that it's unfathomably difficult to try and do that. So the way they solve the custody is by leveraging smart contracts based on Ethereum security. The way we have to solve that, though, we cannot use smart contracts. Why? Because we are dealing with many different chains that have many different designs. Bitcoin, for example, doesn't have smart contracts. So we have to solve that a little bit differently. The way we do that is we have actually another chain called Thorchain and another chain called Maya. Each one has validators. And these validators use cryptography called threshold signature schemes. This cryptography, what it does is have an address on Bitcoin, an address on Ethereum, an address on Solana. But that address, that wallet, is not held by any one person. It's held by a set of validators together. And this cryptography, what it does is kind of mix the signing. So the only way 1 cent can leave that vault is by 67% consensus of the signers. So it kind of functions like a multisig, but a larger scale. Now, still doesn't seem like it's custody solved because these people can then come together and just steal, right? Well, what we do is make them have a collateral. So they come and bring collateral in our token, Rune in the case of Thorchain, Liquidity in the case of Maya, and this collateral is posted. And now they're giving custody or shared custody of the funds at a level at, below, or around the collateral they posted. So now they don't steal because they not only stand to not earn the incentives that we have, just like miners have incentives on Bitcoin, here validators have incentives, they get a share of the trades, but they also stand to lose their collateral. So that's this custody problem is a little bit different and has to be solved as well, for sure.
Cool, thanks for that.
A question about, I think the term used was something like economic efficiency as far as the price impact on large transactions.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the right term?
So you have price execution. That's how much you're losing out on what you should get. So if you have, 10 apples and they're supposed to be worth 100, if you had to pay 101, well, that price execution of $1, you paid $1 in fees and slip and whatnot. But what allows price execution to be worse or better is the capital efficiency. How much liquidity is needed by directly the market and any players around the market, like arbitrage bots, to serve that transaction. So if they're more efficient, they're willing to forego fees and price differentials to give you a better settlement.
Okay, and I think you mentioned one of the ways you improve that is by structuring transactions into many smaller ones, say the example of $100 transactions, right? What kind of impact does that have on the time frame that it takes a transaction to execute, and how do you achieve the optimum balance?
You're absolutely right. What we do is trade off a little bit price execution improvement with increasing the time horizon. Thankfully, it's we have a block every 6 seconds, right? So you can already, in just 1 minute, have your trade slipped already in 10 parts. That it's already much better price execution. But you can break it up to 14,000 bits, which is 1 day. A day might sound like a lot, but if you're trading $10 million, which we've had transactions of that size, it's something you would be willing to do if you're gonna keep, 1 percentage point more of your money. So thankfully, you're free to choose. You can still decide to do it in one go, or you can decide to have it go for over an hour or a full day. Now, decreasing the block time from 6 seconds down to 2 means we start doing less trade-offs in the time horizon, in the time dimension, by being able to break up the transaction in 3 times as many subswaps in the same amount of time. Any other question, guys? Go ahead.
In 2011, I was called a Luddite by Mandrick. So just you bear with me. But you were saying streaming. So to help me with the visual of that, with what you were saying, rather than thinking of the streaming service Netflix, can we just use, for example, a hose of water that the water's streaming through? Now, from what I understand, so it's released from here, from the spigot, thank you. It's streaming through. Now you're saying that it has to fill the container at the end of that hose, and then it goes, or whatever you're sending is incrementally being received.
So we do fill
I
the.
have another follow-up
yeah.
to that. I just want to understand that further.
We do fill the bucket first, and then send the bucket in one go.
Okay.
As opposed to not streaming it, which would be carrying a lot of water in one go, which would be taxing.
Okay, so then imagine, so as it's filling, say it's halfway filled, and there are proverbial kinks that occur in the chain, and it's now taking long. Is there any way that I could say, okay, fine, I wanted to transfer $1 million and whatever, and it's half of that, and the kinks are now telling me that it's going to take a week for confirmations. I'll just take this and go with that.
We don't have precisely that maneuverability.
Mm-hmm.
We have something a little bit different, which is a price limit. What you can say, because we have now this trade-off of time dimension, it might take a day.
Yep.
So maybe the price of Bitcoin is moving against you.
Yep.
And you don't want that. You want to have, at least this settlement price, or I'd rather get a refund. So what the streaming will do is you can say what that limit is, and throughout the day it's going to swap at whatever price the AMM is setting. And if it ever is under that limit, those subswaps will remain in your input on the Bitcoin, let's say you sent in, and accumulating now 2 buckets. The ETH that went the right, at the right price that you wanted or better, and then the Bitcoin that didn't, that encountered this kink. And then at the end, I'm gonna give you 2 buckets: all the ETH output that succeeded below your price limit, and the Bitcoin that didn't.
So there isn't. So you're just not a Bitcoin.
Yeah. So Maya and Thorchain are not infallible. There's still code that people are developing, that nodes are running. But in the end, everybody in the system has an economic incentive to make sure the system runs as smoothly as possible and that people are served correctly. So when there have been issues, which there have been, people get refunded. You cannot cancel streaming swaps at this time. It's something that has been brought up, but currently it hasn't been developed. That said, if somebody feels they're sensitive to this issue, they don't want to have a streaming swap be exposed for so long to protocol risk, you can always just not do a streaming swap, do several single swaps, for example, throughout the day, manually put it up. So every time you see and you say, oh, it's a good price, I feel the protocol is okay and there's no issue, I do a single swap now, and it just takes 6 seconds. Yeah. No, you can see. No, because it's still in the vaults of the protocol, be this Thorchain or Maya, and they still haven't sent it out to you until the end. Yeah. But I think Paul wanted to say something, and we have somebody else back there.
I'm just very interested in this limits situation you got here. Is there any opportunity for wallet apps to support limit orders
Of course.
explicitly with this?
Of course. Not currently, there are some. By the way, it's fresh out of the oven. It's been live for a few weeks on mainnet, on Thorchain, not yet on Maya, but we're gonna have it too. Yes, they're up to 3 days long. They expire in 3 days. Over time, we will increase the time that you can set for it to expire to be longer than that. For now, it's up to 3 days. But yeah, you could have a user right now say, I'm happy to trade some of my BTC for XMR after this price, and have it sit there, and then hit and happen in a trustless fashion. Well, trust minimized fashion. Go ahead, Paul.
You mentioned something that I totally wasn't aware of. I always learn something new. When I had first tried to use a streaming swap, as soon as one of the sub swaps failed due to price limit, the rest all failed. Has that actually been changed where you'll actually continue to increment 2 buckets, meaning some will fail, some will succeed back and forth during the course of the swaps?
I'm not sure if it ever didn't work this way.
For Thorchain, it definitely did.
Really? Well,
It was my biggest complaint.
yeah. Well, right now it did. It will retry not retry things that already failed. Those will stay in the refund bucket. But if throughout the day the price comes back again to a point where the price limit isn't hit, the rest of the sub swaps will go through on both Thorchain and Maya.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, that addresses a complaint I had a year or two ago.
Any other complaints? we're no.
It might already be fixed.
We're totally decentralized. We have no idea who uses us. We get no feedback. So come on in.
Yeah.
Tell us what you like, what you use, and
Sweet.
we can change things. That's
cool.
That's the beauty. Anybody can contribute to all of this. It's all open source. And if you think, well, I'm not a developer, I'm not either. I cannot code, but I'm here and I'm building and trying to do this better. So there's many roles anyone can play.
Very cool. Anyone else have any questions? Okay. No, I don't. But I guess that closes it. Thanks so much, Aaluxx. Appreciate
My pleasure.
it.
Thank
Good
you,
round
guys.
of applause.
Have a nice day.